The battlefield was eerily silent, save for the faint hum of alien machinery and the distant rumble of war. The human soldier stood at the edge of a jagged cliff, his boots sinking slightly into the soft, ash-like soil that covered this alien world. His rifle hung loosely in his grip, but his eyes were sharp, scanning the horizon with a mix of caution and defiance. He wasn't alone. Behind him stretched a line of armored troops, their faces obscured by helmets, breathing heavily through oxygen masks. They had come here not as conquerors but as survivors, desperate to protect what little remained of humanity after centuries of conflict. The air smelled metallic, tinged with something unfamiliar yet strangely alive. It prickled against the skin like static electricity, making every hair on the back of the soldier's neck stand on end. This planet, though barren and desolate at first glance, was teeming with life hidden beneath its surface. And now, they were about to meet its ruler, a being whispered about in legends among both humans and aliens alike, the Alien Queen. She emerged from the shadows of a towering spire made of organic material, pulsating faintly as if it were breathing. Her presence was overwhelming, commanding silence even from the wind itself. She loomed over them, her massive frame supported by 6 powerful legs tipped with razor-sharp claws. Her elongated head tilted downward, golden eyes glowing with an intensity that seemed to pierce straight through armor and flesh. Behind her, cocoon-like structures clung to the walls, some trembling faintly, hinting at new life waiting to be born. The soldier swallowed hard, his throat dry despite the moisture regulator in his suit. He knew better than anyone how dangerous she was, not just physically, but emotionally. This wasn't just another enemy leader or warlord. The Alien Queen wasn't driven by greed or power. She fought for survival, for her children, for the future of her kind. And there was nothing more terrifying than facing someone willing to do anything, absolutely anything, to protect what they loved. Her voice cut through the stillness, low and guttural, vibrating deep within their chests. "You dare trespass here," she growled, each word dripping with venom. "You dare bring your weapons, your destruction to my home?" No one answered. No one dared. "I have watched you humans," she continued, pacing slowly before them, her tail swishing behind her like a living whip. "I have seen your wars, your endless hunger for conquest. But hear me now, if any harm comes to my young, if my baby cries because of your actions—" She paused, leaning closer until her face was mere inches away from the soldier who stood at the front. Her breath was hot, carrying the scent of sulfur and something primal, ancient. "I will destroy your entire existence." The threat hung in the air, heavier than the oppressive atmosphere around them. It wasn't empty bravado, it was a promise, delivered with such raw conviction that it sent shivers down even the most battle-hardened spines. The soldier clenched his jaw, refusing to look away, though every instinct screamed at him to step back. But then, amidst the tension, a sound pierced the silence. A soft, high-pitched wail echoing from somewhere behind the queen. Her body stiffened instantly, her golden eyes narrowing as she turned toward the source of the noise. One of the cocoon-like pods quivered violently, and from within came another cry, louder this time, filled with distress. "My child," she murmured, her tone shifting from fury to desperation. She moved swiftly, her movements fluid and precise, reaching out to cradle the pod with surprising gentleness. The cries grew louder, more insistent, and the queen let out a low growl, her focus snapping back to the soldiers. "You!" she snarled, pointing a clawed finger at them. "Your machines, your explosions, they've frightened my baby. How dare you disrupt my nest?" Before anyone could react, the ground beneath them trembled. The spires began to pulse faster, their glow intensifying until it bathed the battlefield in an eerie green light. The queen's rage was palpable, radiating outward like waves of heat. She threw her head back and let out a deafening roar, a sound so primal and guttural that it shook the very core of the soldiers' resolve. And then, chaos erupted. The alien queen's fury unfurled like a storm breaking loose, her massive form surging forward with a speed that defied her size. Her claws raked across the ground, tearing up chunks of the earth as if it were mere fabric. The soldiers scrambled backward, their training momentarily forgotten under the sheer terror of witnessing her wrath. Her golden eyes blazed like molten suns, fixed on them with an intensity that felt almost physical, as though her gaze alone could burn through their armor. "You think yourselves brave?" she bellowed, her voice reverberating through the battlefield, shaking the very air. "Brave enough to invade my domain, to threaten my offspring? Look at what you've done." She gestured sharply toward the cocoon where her baby continued to wail, its cries growing more frantic with each passing second. The sound seemed to echo endlessly, intertwining with the groans of the trembling spires around them. It was as if the entire planet itself shared her anger, responding to her rage with violent tremors. One of the soldiers raised his weapon hesitantly, aiming it at her colossal form. But before he could fire, the queen lashed out with her tail, striking him with brutal precision. The impact sent him flying several feet, his body slamming into a nearby rock formation with a sickening crunch. His comrades froze, paralyzed by indecision. Should they retaliate or retreat? Neither option seemed viable against this force of nature. Her movements were relentless, chaotic yet calculated, like a predator cornering its prey. She circled the group, her claws scraping against the ground in warning. "Do you know what it is to lose everything?" she demanded, her words slicing through the din of destruction. "To watch as your family is torn apart by invaders who care only for themselves? You humans are no better than parasites, spreading your filth wherever you go." Behind her, the cocoon quivered again, eliciting another heart-wrenching cry from the infant inside. The queen paused mid-stride, her chest heaving as she glanced over her shoulder. For a brief moment, her expression softened, and the soldiers caught a glimpse of something unexpected: vulnerability. It was fleeting, vanishing almost as quickly as it appeared, replaced once more by unbridled fury. "You cannot comprehend," she spat, turning back to face them. "You do not understand the bond between a mother and her child. To you, we are monsters, beasts to be exterminated without thought or mercy. But I am no monster. I am a protector. And I will not allow you to harm what I hold most dear." With those words, she lunged again, her claws slicing through the air like scythes. A nearby soldier barely managed to dodge, stumbling backward as her strike missed him by inches. Another fired a burst of plasma rounds at her, the shots hitting her armored exoskeleton with dull thuds. She didn't flinch, didn't even seem to notice. Instead, she grabbed the attacker by the leg with her tail, lifting him off the ground like a rag doll before hurling him toward the others. The impact sent several men sprawling, their weapons skittering across the ground. The battlefield was descending into pandemonium. The tremors grew stronger, causing fissures to split open in the earth, swallowing chunks of debris, and nearly swallowing the soldiers themselves. Dust filled the air, choking and blinding, forcing them to rely on their instincts rather than their sight. Through it all, the queen's roars echoed like thunder, drowning out the cries of her baby and the shouts of the panicked soldiers. Amidst the chaos, the soldier who had initially faced her stepped forward, raising his hands in a gesture of surrender. "Stop!" he shouted, his voice hoarse but firm. "We didn't come here to fight you. We're trying to survive, just like you." The queen halted abruptly, her tail poised mid-strike, her eyes narrowing as she regarded him. For a moment, there was silence, broken only by the distant wails of her child and the groaning of the planet beneath their feet. Then slowly she lowered her tail, though her stance remained tense, ready to strike at any provocation. "Survive," she repeated, her tone colder than ice. "At what cost? Your survival means the death of mine. Tell me, human, how is that fair?" He opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. What could he say? The truth was ugly, harsh, and undeniable. Their species had waged war upon countless worlds, driven by fear and desperation. They had destroyed ecosystems, slaughtered innocents, all in the name of self-preservation. And yet, standing here now, staring into the eyes of a creature who wanted nothing more than to protect her own, he couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt. The queen must have seen it in his expression because her lip curled into a sneer. "Ah, so you understand now," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "But understanding changes nothing. You are still a threat, and I cannot afford to show mercy, not when my child's life hangs in the balance." As if to emphasize her point, the baby's cries escalated into a piercing shriek, cutting through the haze of dust and smoke. The queen's head snapped toward the sound, her features contorting with anguish. She let out a low, keening sound, almost like a whimper, before spinning back to face the soldiers with renewed ferocity. "You will pay for this," she vowed, her voice trembling with emotion. "Every last one of you." And with that, she charged once more, her fury reaching new heights, her movements fueled by a mother's love and a warrior's determination. The soldiers braced themselves, knowing full well that they were outmatched, but also aware that retreat was no longer an option. The alien queen would not stop until she had ensured the safety of her child, even if it meant annihilating every human in her path. The cacophony of battle reached its zenith as the alien queen unleashed her full might, her claws slicing through the air with deadly precision. Soldiers scrambled to regroup, their weapons firing in vain against her impenetrable exoskeleton. Each shot ricocheted harmlessly, sparking against her armored hide while she advanced with relentless purpose. Her tail whipped around like a living weapon, striking down those who dared to approach too closely. One soldier fell clutching his side, blood seeping through his fingers, while another was thrown into a jagged spire, his scream cut short by the impact. Yet amidst the chaos, the queen herself seemed to falter. Her movements, though still fierce, carried an edge of desperation. Her golden eyes darted frequently toward the trembling cocoon behind her, where the cries of her baby grew louder and more distressed. The sound tore at her, evident in the way her body tensed whenever it pierced the air. For all her strength and ferocity, she was undeniably distracted, torn between defending her territory and soothing her terrified offspring. "Enough!" she roared, her voice cracking under the weight of her emotions. With a swipe of her claw, she sent two soldiers tumbling backward, their rifles skidding out of reach. She planted herself firmly between them and the cocoon, her massive frame casting a shadow that engulfed half the battlefield. Her chest rose and fell rapidly, her breaths coming in ragged gasps. "Stay away from my child," she commanded, her tone oscillating between a snarl and a plea. "Haven't you caused enough suffering?" The human soldier who had earlier tried to reason with her stepped forward again, his hands still raised in surrender. His helmet reflected the eerie green glow of the pulsating spires, masking his expression. "We don't want to hurt your baby," he said, his voice steady despite the trembling in his limbs. "We're not here for them, we're here because we have nowhere else to go." His words seemed to catch her off guard, halting her next attack mid-motion. She tilted her head slightly, studying him with narrowed eyes. There was no mockery in his tone, no deception she could detect, at least, none that her instincts flagged as immediate danger. Still, skepticism lingered in her gaze. "Lies," she hissed, though there was less venom in her accusation now. "Humans always lie. Your kind has never known restraint." "It's true," another soldier chimed in, emerging from the haze of dust and smoke. His uniform was torn, his face streaked with dirt and sweat, but his voice carried conviction. "We've done terrible things, things we can't take back. But this isn't one of them. We didn't come here to fight you or your children." The queen's tail twitched, betraying her inner turmoil. She glanced once more at the cocoon, where the shrill cries showed no sign of abating. Her jaw tightened, and for a moment, she looked almost lost. The confidence that had defined her earlier seemed to waver, replaced by something softer, more vulnerable. "Then why are you here?" she demanded, her voice quieter now, almost hesitant. "Why disturb my nest if not to destroy it?" The lead soldier hesitated, glancing briefly at his comrades before focusing on her again. "Because Earth is dying," he admitted, the admission heavy with sorrow. "Our wars, our greed, they've poisoned our world. We're trying to find somewhere safe to rebuild, somewhere to start over. We didn't know this place belonged to anyone." He gestured vaguely at the spires, the trembling ground, the cocoon. "We didn't know about you." For a long moment, silence stretched between them, broken only by the faint whimpers of the baby and the distant groan of shifting terrain. The queen's posture shifted subtly, her shoulders relaxed ever so slightly, though her claws remained poised defensively. She stared at him, searching for truth in his words, weighing them against centuries of mistrust and hatred. Finally, she spoke, her voice low and measured. "And what makes you think I should believe you?" "We don't expect you to," the soldier replied honestly. "Not after everything we've done. But we're asking, begging, you to give us a chance. If we wanted to harm you, We wouldn't have stopped fighting when you told us to. We wouldn't be standing here talking instead of attacking." Her eyes flickered toward the fallen soldiers scattered across the battlefield, some unconscious, others nursing wounds. None of them posed an immediate threat, yet she remained wary. "Words mean nothing," she growled. "Actions define intent. Prove to me that you are not the monsters I know you to be." "How?" the soldier asked, his voice tinged with desperation. "What can we do to prove ourselves?" The queen hesitated, her gaze drifting back to the cocoon. The baby's cries had softened somewhat, though they still echoed faintly in the background. She exhaled slowly, her massive chest rising and falling with the effort. "Leave," she said finally, her tone resolute. "Take your people and leave this place. Never return. That is the only proof I require." "But," the soldier began, only to be cut off by a sharp growl from the queen. Her patience was wearing thin, her protective instincts overriding any semblance of diplomacy. "No buts," she snapped, her voice rising once more. "You claim to seek peace, yet your presence here brings nothing but chaos. Go before I change my mind." The soldiers exchanged uneasy glances, uncertainty rippling through their ranks. They had come seeking refuge, hoping to escape the devastation of their own world, but now they faced a choice: retreat and abandon their mission, or defy the queen and risk annihilation. The lead soldier clenched his fists, his resolve wavering under the weight of impossible decisions. Before he could respond, the cocoon behind the queen shuddered violently, drawing everyone's attention. A crack formed along its surface, splitting wider with each passing second. The queen spun around, her demeanor shifting instantly from hostility to concern. She crouched low, her claws gently prying at the opening, revealing the tiny, writhing form of her newborn within. The baby's cries intensified as it struggled to free itself, its fragile body glistening with a slimy, translucent membrane. The sight struck a chord in the soldiers, many of whom found themselves unable to look away. Despite the terror she inspired, the queen's devotion to her child was undeniable, a universal truth that transcended species. Even the hardened warriors among them felt a pang of empathy, recognizing the same primal instinct to protect that drove their own actions. As the queen cooed softly to her baby, her massive form dwarfing the delicate creature in her grasp, the battlefield fell eerily quiet. The tremors ceased, the spires dimmed, and even the wind seemed to hold its breath. For the first time since their arrival, the humans witnessed a side of her they hadn't expected: vulnerability, tenderness, love. But peace was far from assured. As the queen cradled her newborn close, her golden eyes flicked upward, locking onto the soldiers once more. Though her expression had softened, the warning in her gaze remained clear. "Go," she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. "While you still can." And with that, the standoff hung precariously in the balance, neither side willing to make the next move. The soldiers stood frozen, their weapons lowered but not abandoned. The weight of the queen's words hung heavy in the air, mingling with the soft mewling sounds of her newborn. It was a moment suspended in time, a fragile thread connecting two vastly different worlds, each teetering on the edge of either understanding or destruction. The lead soldier glanced at his comrades, searching for some semblance of consensus, but all he found were faces etched with uncertainty and fear. "We can't just leave," one of the younger soldiers muttered under his breath, though loud enough for the others to hear. "If we go back empty-handed, there's nothing waiting for us. No Earth. No home." His words resonated deeply, stirring murmurs of agreement among the group. They had risked everything to come here, to this alien planet, to face its dangers and unknowns, all in the hope of finding salvation. To turn away now felt like admitting defeat, like condemning what little remained of humanity to extinction. But as they looked at the queen, cradling her child with such raw tenderness, it became clear that leaving wasn't merely an act of retreat. It was also an acknowledgement of life. Their own lives, yes, but hers too, and the life she protected so fiercely. The lead soldier stepped forward again, his boots crunching softly against the brittle ground. "Your Majesty," he began, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside him. "We understand your anger. We've seen the pain we've caused, not just here, but everywhere we've gone. And if we could undo it, we would. But we're desperate. If we don't find a new place to survive, Our species will die out." The queen's golden eyes narrowed, her expression unreadable. She shifted slightly, adjusting the position of her newborn in her arms. The tiny creature let out a weak cry, prompting her to emit a low, soothing hum. Her focus never left the soldier, however, as though daring him to continue. "We're not asking for much," he pressed on, choosing his words carefully. "Just a chance. A small corner of this world where we can live without interfering with you or your kind. We'll stay out of your territory, keep our distance. All we need is space to breathe, to rebuild. That's all." Her tail twitched, a subtle warning that betrayed her growing impatience. "You ask me to trust you," she said, her tone laced with disbelief. "To allow you, a species known for betrayal and devastation, to share my world? Why should I believe you won't bring ruin upon us as you have done elsewhere?" "Because we have no choice but to change," the soldier replied earnestly. "Our old ways led us to ruin. This isn't about conquest anymore, it's about survival, about learning from our mistakes. Give us a chance, and we'll prove ourselves worthy." For a long moment, silence reigned. The queen studied him intently, her gaze piercing through the layers of armor and resolve until it seemed to touch something deeper within him. He didn't flinch, meeting her stare head-on, even as sweat trickled down his temple beneath his helmet. Finally she spoke, her voice softer yet still commanding. "Prove yourself then. Right now." The soldier blinked, caught off guard by her demand. "What do you mean?" She gestured toward the battlefield, where the remnants of their skirmish lay scattered. Broken weapons, damaged equipment, unconscious soldiers sprawled across the ground. "Leave them," she ordered. "Take only what you carry on your backs and walk away. No ships, no reinforcements, no tricks. If you truly seek peace, show me by walking away from everything else." The request sent shockwaves through the group. Abandoning their gear meant more than just leaving behind tools and supplies. It meant stripping themselves of any advantage, any means of defense. It was a test of faith, one that required absolute trust in the queen's mercy. Murmurs of dissent rippled through the ranks, but the lead soldier silenced them with a raised hand. "Agreed," he said firmly, turning back to the queen. "We'll leave everything behind. Just give us a day, a single day, to regroup and recover. Then we'll leave your territory and find somewhere else to settle." The queen hesitated, her claws flexing ever so slightly. She glanced down at her newborn, who had begun to quiet under her care, its cries replaced by faint coos. For a moment, it seemed as though she might refuse, might lash out once more in anger. But instead, she nodded curtly, her decision final. "One day," she growled. "And if you break your word—" "We won't," the soldier promised quickly, cutting her off. "You have my word." Her lip curled into a sneer, though it lacked the malice of earlier. "Words are meaningless unless backed by action. Prove yours, human, or suffer the consequences." With that, she turned her attention fully to her newborn, dismissing the soldiers as though they were already irrelevant. The baby wriggled in her grasp, its tiny body glowing faintly with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed in rhythm with its breathing. The sight was mesmerizing, almost hypnotic, and the soldiers found themselves unable to look away. There was something profoundly intimate about watching her care for her child, a stark contrast to the ferocity she had displayed moments before. Reluctantly, the lead soldier signaled for his team to begin gathering the wounded and preparing to move out. As they worked, the queen remained vigilant, her golden eyes tracking their every movement. Though she made no further threats, the tension between them remained palpable, a reminder that their reprieve was temporary at best. By the time the sun, or whatever passed for daylight on this alien world, began to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows over the battlefield, the soldiers had dismantled their makeshift camp and left behind anything that couldn't be carried. Their progress was slow, hindered by injuries and exhaustion, but they moved with purpose, driven by the knowledge that failure meant certain death. As they disappeared into the distance, the queen watched them go, her expression unreadable. Beside her, her newborn nestled closer, its glowing patterns dimming as it drifted into sleep. She exhaled slowly, her massive frame sagging slightly with relief, or perhaps resignation. The battle may have ended, But the war for trust was far from over. And deep within the recesses of the alien spires, the planet itself seemed to breathe, waiting to see what the future held for both its native inhabitants and these intruders who dared to dream of coexistence. As the soldiers trudged through the alien terrain, their steps heavy with uncertainty, the Queen remained atop the ridge, her silhouette framed against the dimming sky. She cradled her child close, her claws gently tracing the delicate ridges along its back. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, silence blanketed the land, a fragile calm that seemed to echo the tentative hope both sides now clung to. The lead soldier glanced over his shoulder one last time, catching a glimpse of her towering form before she vanished into the shadows of the spires. His heart pounded not with fear, but with resolve. They had been given a chance, a rare and precious opportunity to rewrite the story of humanity's legacy. Whether they would succeed or fail rested entirely in their hands. Behind him, whispers of doubt still lingered among his comrades, but there was also determination. Each step forward carried the weight of their promise, each breath a vow to honor it. The alien world stretched endlessly before them, vast and unforgiving, yet brimming with possibilities. In the distance, the faint pulse of the spires continued, as if the planet itself were watching, waiting. The Queen's voice echoed faintly in the soldier's mind, "Prove yourselves." And so they would, step by step, day by day. The horizon glowed faintly as night fell, casting strange hues across the landscape. It was neither Earth nor home, but perhaps, just perhaps, it could be. One day. And with that thought, the soldiers marched onward, their figures growing smaller against the alien expanse, leaving behind the battlefield, and the Queen, with nothing but cautious hope guiding their way.